Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are. Tonight, I would like to discuss an issue that is, I think, of paramount importance. We all know since the 2008 elections, Zimbabwean elections, that Zimbabwean participating in these elections has become an exercise in futility. For those who are not familiar, I'll recount what happened in 2008. Since the country's independence in 1980, Zanu PF has rigged elections in Zimbabwe. And SADC, the Commonwealth, the AU, and many other countries have turned a blind eye to that vote rigging. But in 2002, the Commonwealth made a stand and suspended Zimbabwe from the club. And the following year, Mugabe withdrew from the Commonwealth. And in the run-up to the 2008 elections, the SADC region finally also took a stand and pressured the Zanu PF regime to implement changes in preparation for the 2008 elections. And so when the 2008 elections happened in March 2008, the atmosphere was peaceful. The process itself was transparent, and the conduct of the whole election was very professional. The nearest Zimbabwe had ever come to free, fair, and credible elections. Only that the results did not reflect that, because Zanu PF, no doubt through its own embedded operatives in the Zimbabwe Election Commission, informed the regime that the opposition was winning the March 2008 elections. And so Mnangagwa, by his own admission, revived the Zanu PF vote rigging juggernaut. And ZEC were instructed not to reveal the results of the election. And the regime took over. And what followed was, for the next 6 weeks, the results of the 210 parliamentary seats were released in bits and pieces. There were only 5 million people who had voted that year. And there was absolutely no excuse why it took 6 weeks to count 5 million votes. And the last result to be revealed was that of the presidential race. And by Mugabe's own admission, Tsvangirai, who was his chief challenger that year, had garnered 73% of the votes. And the 6 weeks was used to whittle down the 73% to a respectable 47%, just enough to force off the runoff. And during the runoff, the regime launched Operation Mafotera Papi. Whom did you vote for? A rhetorical question that was really meant as the excuse for punishing the electorate for having rejected the Zanu PF candidate, Robert Mugabe, in the presidential race, and the party itself. And it recruited the party militia, the youth militia, and the war veterans as foot soldiers who were unleashed, and they started beating up people, harassing people, raping people. And as backup, they had personnel from the army, the police, the CIO, and the prison services. And these were the individuals who carried out the heavy lifting stuff of adapting people, beating them up, and over 500 people were murdered during those few months of the runoff, 3 months or so. Mugabe, on one of his rallies during that runoff period, boasted that what was achieved by the bullet could not be undone by the ballot, and thus giving encouragement to the thugs, the Operation Maputo Papi thugs. The level of violence was unbelievable. Tsvangirai was forced to withdraw, complaining that Zanu PF had declared war on the people. Mugabe went on to win the one horse race with 84% of the vote. For the first time, SADC in the AU refused to rubber stamp Zanu PF's victory. And they forced Zanu PF to sign the 2008 Global Political Agreement, in which he agreed to implement democratic reforms designed to stop a repeat of the 2008 blatant cheating and wanton violence. The Global Political Agreement created the Government of National Unity, in which the participants were Zanu PF, led by Robert Mugabe himself, and then the two opposition MDC factions, led by Morgan Tsvangirai, that's the main MDC faction, and a smaller faction led by Atham Tambara, and later on to be led by Welshman Ngube. The 2008 to 2013 GNU primary task was to implement the democratic reforms designed to stop the cheating and the wanton violence of 2008. Sadly, not even one meaningful reform was implemented. Not one. Mugabe bribed Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends with the trappings of power, the ministerial limousines, generous salaries and allowances, and for Morgan Tsvangirai, the US 4 million mansion. And in return, the opposition forgot about reforms. So not even one meaningful reform was implemented. And towards the end of the GNU, when the SADC leaders realized that no meaningful reform had been implemented, they tried to get the 2013 election postponed until reforms were implemented. Unfortunately, MDC did not listen. They ignored. Their warning fell on deaf ears. They went on to participate in those elections, and of course, Zanu PF rigged them. It has since expired. that MDC leaders themselves knew that Zanu PF was rigging these elections. Pendai in an interview in 2015, admitted that it is foolish to keep on participating in these flawed elections, knowing fully well that Zanu PF will win them. Without reforms, Zanu PF will win them. And by participating, you're giving Zanu PF legitimacy. It was David Coltart, one of the MDC leaders, who actually shed some light on why the MDC leaders themselves kept participating. And in his book, he admitted that the opposition were participating because they were after the few seats that Zanu PF was offering the opposition to entice them to participate. And so that explains why they keep on participating, even against their own assessment that the process is flawed. The question then comes, why is the ordinary Zimbabwean participating? Assuming that they understand what it means to say the process is so flawed, you cannot win it, and but by participating, you're giving Zanu PF legitimacy. So why are they participating? One can understand the rural voters who are frog-marched. They don't have a say in that. They're forced to participate, whether they like it or not. But what about those people who can make a conscientious decision not to participate? Why are they participating? The truth of the matter is, most of those people are participating because they honestly do not understand the full implications of, if you participate, you're giving legitimacy to the regime. They don't understand it. They have struggled to understand that if you vote, you change. You bring up, you get a political change. They've seen it in Zambia and other countries, and they now are sold to that idea that they keep on participating, thinking that Zimbabwe will also have a meaningful change as a result of participating and voting. They are finding it very difficult to understand that unless the elections are free, fair, and credible, participating can be totally meaningless. And in this case, it's even worse. Because if you participate, you're giving the vote rigging Zanu PF legitimacy. And thus you're perpetuating the dictatorship. They're not helping yourself there. But they have got problems understanding that concept. These are people who can be compared to somebody who struggle to understand simple arithmetic. You know, the 1 + 1 is 2, 7 + 5 is 12, that sort of thing. Simple arithmetic. They found it very difficult to understand it. But to operate at the level we are talking about here as a voter, you need to understand not just simple arithmetic. You need to understand quadratic equations. That is just too much for them. They don't understand that. So they stick to something that they know. And hence the reason why the country is stuck. We have got a people who do not understand that unless the elections are free, fair, and credible, it is absolutely pointless. It's not, in fact, it's worse than pointless participating in elections. You are participating only to give Zanu PF legitimacy. For the opposition, yes, they get the few seats. That's what they are after. These people here do not understand the nonsensical oxymoron that the opposition is selling them. The idea that, oh, we can win rigged elections, particularly when they know the level of rigging we are talking about here, as exercised by Zanu PF in 2008. You can't win those elections. If 73% is not good enough to win the elections, you really need to seriously look into the system. But that is what they're failing to do. So we are in a position here where we are stuck with the ruling party, Zanu PF, who are rigging these elections to perpetuate their own stranglehold on power. They are not going to implement any reforms there because they're not going to reform themselves out of power. We could stop Zanu PF dictatorship if the opposition implemented the reforms and stopped participating to give Zanu PF legitimacy. But they're not going to do that because they have now come to a settlement where they will participate in these meaningless elections for the sake of the few gravy train seats that Zanu PF gives them as a reward. We are also stuck with a number of ordinary Zimbabweans who keep participating in these elections because they are finding it very difficult to understand that it is irrational to keep on participating in flawed election processes. They are really finding it difficult to understand that. And so they're easily conned by the opposition into believing that the opposition is going to win these elections and win big on the basis of some oxymoronic nonsense of we have got winning rigged election strategies, which are just hot air. One of their so-called strategies was that we are going to have mass voter registration so that we can overwhelm the system. Of course, Zanu PF controls the whole process, including the voter registration itself. And they've successfully frustrated the opposition from registering their supporters en masse. As of 30th of May last year, that's 4 years since the last election, only 250,000 people had registered to vote. And that is 4%. Even if we assume that 250,000, they are all opposition supporters, that is 4% of what the opposition had set itself as a target. They had set themselves a target of 6 million. So after 4 years, they'd only managed to register 4%. And to expect in the interim, they would have registered any more to significantly reach that 6 million is naive. Zanu PF is rigging these elections. We can't stop that. The MDC is participating in these elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy and in return get a few gravy train seats. We can't stop that. What we could have stopped is ordinary people participating. But when you have got an electorate that is so naive, they will believe whatever the opposition tell them. I think we are facing an uphill challenge here. They don't understand that participating will give Zanu PF legitimacy. So they will participate, particularly more so when they are told by the opposition that the opposition is winning big. They'll be shocked, of course, the morning after the voting is done, because the same opposition is going to tell them Zanu PF rigged the elections. And they don't even have the intellect to ask Chamisa and company, so what happened to your winning in rigged election strategies? That is the challenge we are facing. We can stop Zanu PF getting legitimacy if we could stop the opposition participating, if we could stop some of these people, simple people who are participating out of ignorance. One can only try to educate them. And I think we should take that challenge. It is not rocket science to make these people understand that it's meaningless participating in an election that is so flawed that 73% is not good enough to win the election. But when you're dealing with the kind of people we are dealing with, very simple-minded people, I don't mean that as an insult, I'm only saying that as a matter of fact. We have got a challenge. But Zimbabwe cannot afford another rigged election. That is the truth. The country cannot afford another 5 years of corrupt and incompetent Zanu PF rule. That is the alternative we are facing. That is why we have got to take up the challenge of educating these people and making sure that at the end of the day, Zanu PF does not get legitimacy. That is the challenge. With that, I'll say thank you very much for listening and good night.